Well, tradition says, and the song says, that it is Santa Claus who makes a list and checks it twice to find out who's naughty and who's nice. But I suspect that there are a lot of list makers amongst us. Let me see your hands, list makers. Yes, yes. Be proud, be proud. We are those people. We perhaps are the people who actually put at the top of the list, make lists so we can check that off. I've been known to put things onto the list after I've done them so I could cross them out. I think it sometimes is tempting to perhaps put on my list, stop making lists, but in point of fact, I actually like my lists. I think they keep me sane when I'm busy so that I don't worry that I'm forgetting something. They keep me accountable if I'm feeling a little bit lazy and unmotivated. And on days when my work feels a little nebulous and I'm not sure what I've really done, I can look at those crossed off items and I can feel a little more satisfied. They remind me that I have, in fact, accomplished some things in this world. I have to say I beat Santa. I certainly check my lists more than twice. But my to-do list is never so long as to fill up every waking hour of my day. Life truly does happen, as we know, when we are making those plans and trying to manipulate and organize what a day looks like. And so I simply try to organize my time so that there is room for the unexpected. Whether it is somebody stopping by my office for conversation, or a little trip to the dog park, or word of a crisis that needs some attention. I do not value being busy, but I do value being organized so that there is room in my life for the unexpected and room to simply be. Because at the core of me, in my heart, there is this longing for some spaciousness. There is an awareness, and I think most of us know this, that life is much more than what we do. And yet what we do does shape our life. In our culture, in many cultures, we're known by what we do. We're identified by our jobs, whether it's teacher or lawyer or homemaker, father, student, retired person, pastor, princess. These titles often are how we identify our lives. And we also, I think, often are identified by what we do or don't have. We are rich because we have money. We are poor because we don't. We are homeless if we do not have a house. We are employed if we have a job, unemployed if we do not have a job. It's literally haves and have-nots. And whether this is right or wrong, and often it is not right, we equate those labels. We think that those labels of what we have and don't have are a direct result of what we do or don't do. So there is pressure on us to be very attached to doing stuff, meeting other people's expectations rather than making clear choices, reacting rather than thoughtfully responding to life around us. Now, back in the day before the exile, if we visit that time again, before the people of Israel were hauled off to Babylon, the prophet Habakkuk was talking to the people yet again about a familiar problem. The problem was that they were making idols. It was one of the ways in which they had turned away from God. Some of them were quite literally making idols. They were putting together little graven images and worshiping them like some of their neighboring countries. But there were others then, and I think there are many of us now, who, if we let his words be timeless, would find that we make idols also out of the stuff of our lives, out of the things that fill up our days. Listen to Habakkuk's words. What use is an idol once his maker has shaped it? A cast image, a teacher of lies. For its maker trusts in what it has made, though the product is only an idol. It cannot speak. And here's the key thing. It's plated with gold and silver, and there is no breath in it at all. There is no breath in it at all. This is terribly important. Breath, the Hebrew word is ruha. Breath is God's very presence. After all, God breathed life into humanity at the beginning of all things, and it is God's breath that sustains every living thing. And an idol has no breath. An idol gives life to absolutely nothing. This could be the way we look at our to-do lists during this season, the stuff that is filling up our time. Are the things that we are choosing to do or simply doing by habit breathing life into the world? Are we life-giving followers of Jesus, or are we casting idols because the world around us is inviting us to do that? The people of Israel lived in a world full of lifeless idols. We may find ourselves in the same situation. Habakkuk closes his words on this subject with some verses that I think you'll find very familiar. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence. Let all the earth keep silence before him. God isn't asking the people to do anything. Just keep silence. It's as if God is saying, just be with me. You don't need any particular words or deeds or rituals. Just be here with me. I think we know that's kind of rare in many ways, but it's wonderful and it's life-giving, and yes, it can be scary, but that really seems to be what God is asking of us, is to be in relationship, to just be with God. In Bible study this last week, we talked about the fact that sometimes during this season, the season gets so packed full of distracting things that we actually may spend a little less time at our prayers or in our study groups or in worship, those things that actually bring us closest to God, those things like the number one thing on your list. The one thing that brings you closest to God could be the one thing you pay the most attention to this season. So this relationship idea, this is perhaps what is important for us, not just in our relationship to God, of being with, but also in our relationship to other people. We may be so busy doing things, even really good things. I mean, we know there's lots of good things we can be doing, but we may be so busy that we are not spending meaningful time just being with the people that we love, simply nurturing those relationships, breathing life into those relationships. Even when we desire to be of service, and this might be with people that we don't know at all, maybe, just maybe, this is an invitation this morning to perhaps move a little closer there as well. It's much scarier to get close enough to actually see a person we are wanting to help, to know a little bit of something of who they are, to listen to a little bit of their story, to breathe a little life into them. And we full well know that when we do that, we too receive a fresh breath of life in us. Just being with God and with each other is life-giving. And all the idols, all those breathless, lifeless idols can fall away. And yet the act of just being, the act of being silent, it seems so hard, doesn't it? As soon as we're asked to be silent, even on a morning like this, our minds start racing and our fingers get a little fidgety and our minds keep racing and we start looking at the watch and we find anything to be a possible distraction and we wonder how much time has passed and we start thinking about lunch and all these things. But somewhere in there, I guarantee you, if you're silent long enough, you will either sigh or you'll yawn. And both of those give you a breath, a deep breath. And whenever that happens, I promise you, there's a little shift in you. There's a little shift in your awareness and in your countenance and in how you are simply there. Now, I don't care if you literally think that's God breathing life into you or if it makes a beautiful metaphor for you, but the thing is, when we keep silent, no matter how imperfect that may be, when we simply make an attempt to be with God with all that mucks that up, we are receiving a breath of life. Now, time for reflection, as we are having during this service, in the midst of all the busyness that is going on outside, or perhaps even inside of you, is an opportunity to breathe. So please, on your little pieces of paper for number 4, write "breathe deeply." Think about this idea that God's presence within you, filling you, is in that breath. Breathe deeply, number 4. Just taking the time to do that and connecting that to the presence of God filling your life, well, I think that is a fabulous way of finding ourselves more connected to God and potentially connected to each other in times and places like this. Just keep breathing. The idols start to fall away. I think it becomes clear. Now, what do I mean by an idol more specifically? Let me give you my shot at this. An idol is anything in your life that is not life-giving to you or to someone else. Anything that isn't life-giving. So it could be the pursuit of money. It could be stuff about your job. It could be shopping. It could be eating. It could be dieting. It could be trying to be liked by everybody. It could be being super organized. Anything that sort of obsessively takes your attention and doesn't breathe life into this existence is an idol. In just a few moments, I'm going to give us a chance to be quiet again, to be silent. During that time, on numbers 5, 6, and 7, I want you to write down some idols, your idols. And then, while you're sitting there in silence, after you write those down, I want you to take a big, beautiful breath, and I want you to cross them off. Just cross them off, because now that makes some space for those relationships, for places where you can breathe life into this world. You can write some things down in that space, or you can leave them open and see what life brings into your world when there is room. In the midst of that, as we spend our time in silence, I do invite you to breathe deeply.